G'day and welcome to the Hunters Campfire Podcast. My name's Mark and along with good mate Ian, we're here to help with all things hunting. If you're looking to start but don't know where to begin, you want to make the most of your next trip away or even plan that hunt of a lifetime, we've got something for you. You'll find our podcasts on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon and plenty of others. And if you want more, head over to our YouTube channel, The Hunters Campfire, where we have plenty of how-to and hunting videos along with the full video production of every podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and good hunting.
Technical difficulties already, that's great. So good evening. Monday, hot summer evening up in Queensland. I don't know how cold it is your way, Zeb, but I'm sure you're suffering from some of the heat if you're out there in the mountains.
We have for the last few days had some warm days in the mid-30s, but yeah, sort of down to the low 20s again today, so typical Victorian weather.
Yep, sounds that way. Well, before we kick too much into the story of Zeb, most people will recognise you from your antics on the internet. Zeb's been around a long time with his YouTube channel and doing some great things. I think it's the first time I've seen you without a hat, so we might be able to dispel a rumour whether you have hair or not.
Yeah, plenty of hair.
It's
just going a bit grey
as well. Yeah, we all are. Yeah. Well, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us. We might just have a quick round the grounds, guys, and just catch up on a few things. Kicking off towards the Red Deer Raw in the next, what are we going to say? 3 weeks? 4 weeks?
5 weeks, yeah. End of March.
End of March up here, right?
What's
going on with the prep, guys? Jono, you getting into it?
No, I think this year's going to be a mess for me, unfortunately. Things are not lining up, unfortunately. So I think the Red Deer Raw will be a bit quiet for me. Potentially come down to New South Wales with yourself, but I have got a family trip booked, so I have to see if I can balance both of those out. But yeah, it'll be the first one in a few years that I miss the Raw, unfortunately.
Never mind. Mark, you're in the thick of the action already.
Yeah, so it's been up there twice now, so first time went up and set the cameras up. Just came back last Friday from the first run checking the cameras. I now carry spare memory cards, so I just swap them over and wait till I get home, because I used to download it in the scrub there with a laptop, against a tree. 20 minutes download each, but no, bring them home. So the block I hunt, for what I've learnt over the last 3 or 4 years, is that it doesn't hold many stags, but it holds a lot of hinds and spikers. And so the stags come in quite late. And the cameras have played that out again. So we've got spikers and a couple of forkies, but mostly hinds on the cameras. One camera got wiped out by a cow, which is annoying, but that's what happens. So I moved it, and another camera's got dogs on it, which is that little video I posted when they were howling when I first got there. Got one at night time, one of the dogs on there. So I'll go back again after this trip to Bathurst, which is this week. I'll go back up there again, check those cameras again, and then I'll probably leave it for 3 weeks and try and get up. I want to get up there for the last week of March. That's when that's when it seems to be at its most active up there. That last week of March.
Good luck with it.
That's my aim.
Yeah. Well, you'll be the one and only in this crew chasing reds, I think. My eyes are squarely focused on Fellow for the rut not long after that. Zeb, what about yourself? Do you get up here chasing reds, or do you really focus more on your Samba work?
Oh, yeah, look, basically a Samba hunter, but I have had the opportunity with a friend that was living in Queensland to come up and hunt on the Ridge Ballot. So he organised it all, and we hunted up there a couple of years in a row. I'm just trying to remember how long ago it was now. I reckon it was 2018, maybe 2019. No, it must have been before then. 2017, 18. So yeah, we hunted 6 days the first time up there with no opportunity. We were hunting with bows, so a lot more difficult than with the rifle. And then the second year ended up nailing a really nice old stag on the first afternoon. So sort of made it all worthwhile. But yeah, he's aged at 14 and a half. Big old boy, ready to die, I think. And yeah, nice 5x4.
Good stag to take.
Yeah. So yeah,
how did you find that experience compared to?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
Often
Zeb,
said.
how did you find that experience compared to your normal daily hunting?
Yeah, look, it's always good to have a change, see some new country and that, and just being vocal compared to a Sambar really gets the blood going when you can, hear a stag roaring down in a gully, and you've got a plan to get the wind right, and hunting with the bow is just a whole new challenge. So we end up having 3 stags roaring in this one little section of country where like 3 little creek kit systems sort of came in together, and we got right in amongst them, and they had a hot doe in there, and yeah, they were just mad on her, and we just slipped right in amongst them, and yeah, shot the big bull at 9 yards, which was pretty cool.
Nice.
That's a good experience.
Oh yeah, we were jumping
last
around.
year.
And bugging, and sorry, we just wish we had a GoPro because it was just like incredible, like to be that close to a big old bull that's just roaring, looking for that hind in the long grass. And, yeah.
The last year they were roaring, so on the week, the last week of March, they were going. There was so much activity that I actually didn't shoot that day. I just kept on going, moving. I think it was 8 stags I ran into that day, just moving, literally you just kept on going around the corner. There was another one and another one and another one, and they were just going crazy. So went up 2 weeks later when it quieted off and took a bit of a roughie because everything was just too good a condition to kind of upset it. So I'm hoping I'm going to have a better outcome. That's going to pay off this year, and hopefully we'll see something with a bit better shape, because it was there's lots of them, but they were a bit skinny last year. So I'm hoping they'll another good year of feed. They'll thicken up a little bit, and hopefully there'll be a bit more antler growth as well.
Awesome. So before we kick on with that, any new gear purchases that you're looking to try out this year? Got any new bits and pieces, Mark, that's in the kit bag?
I'm hoping these Steiner LRFs are going to land, because for Bathurst. So I'm heading down to Bathurst on Thursday. So I'll drive all Thursday and probably stop somewhere on the way and get into Bathurst for Friday morning. We're hunting 3 days, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they're actually going to move to Pennsylvania State Forest. So we're hunting private land, but we're going to move to the Pennsylvania, and got some really good reports about what's happening in Pennsylvania at the moment in terms of deer numbers, so that's going to be quite interesting. So that's the state forest I certainly haven't hunted before, so it's going to be another nice one for the YouTube channel to check out that one. So I'm hoping that they're going to arrive by then, which is Steiner but with a rangefinder. So it's the Predator with the rangefinder. See what they're like. I mean, the only concern is that I've already got a pouch for a rangefinder on my bino rig, so I'm going to have a spare rangefinder if these things work out well. So
could be worse things, Jono.
Well, I've got a new scope, which is still probably sitting on Mark's desk next to him.
A new scope in Mark's shed.
It's in the shed now. It left the desk. It's gone in the shed.
So yeah, that's a new bit of kit for me, is that new scope. I still need to pick it up from Mark and get it fitted, and then just get to the range and do some zeroing on that. Otherwise, no, just doing a little bit of refinement. I've dropped a couple of things out of the pack, just trying to drop a bit of weight, but again, I'm not sure where I'm going to be shooting this year, so that kind of comes into it. If I'm going down to New South Wales, then that'll probably dictate a little bit of change, but not much. I'll try and keep everything the same, just to wherever possible, but just refine it every year, drop a couple of things, add a couple of things, etc. So,
yeah, good.
And you're talking to packs, and you've got a new pack, haven't you, mate?
Yeah, I've moved to the Kuiu Venture 3000 pack, so it's a nice lightweight pack, but it's a 50-litre pack, and it's got a nice sleeve down the centre for holding a rifle. Because I'm working with Missy, the indicating dog, I prefer to have the rifle strapped on my pack and just take more time to watch and video before taking a shot. Now, I'm going to curse that statement. as a nice big buck bounces in front of me, and I've got to dick around trying to get my rifle. But so be it. Hopefully, I'll get the footage first, which is really what we try and do. You'll get that, Zeb, won't you, with all the YouTube creation stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's tough to try and balance it, but the big news really is by the time this podcast drops out, it'll be too late for anyone that's listening to book in and come to the hunters camp that we've got going at Nundle State Forest. We put that out just subtly on our socials for people to latch onto, and between Nundle, Hanging Rock, Tuggelow, Terrible Billy, and Newendok, I think is how they pronounce it, it's booked out solid. We've got a good camp of 30-odd blokes coming in, and it'll just be a fantastic time for everyone to come and spend a week in and around a hunter's camp and head off in their own direction and go hunting. So, Jono, if you haven't booked, good luck. If you have, good on you. You'll be begging someone for a spot by then.
I think I will be.
But it will be an awesome experience. We did it last year. We had about 15 people come through camp and stay with us, and it was really good. So this is really building on last year. And watch the space for those that have booked in. There's quite a bit of stuff coming from our supporters that we're looking to give away. And the headline act that we can announce now, and it'll probably go out on the socials, is one of the... Oh, got to remind me what it is, Mark. It's the Steiner 2021 8x42s for a giveaway.
Yeah, they might be the HX. I haven't seen them. I know that it's possibly the HX, or as I said, I haven't seen the particular model. But even the older Predators, the non-laser rangefinder Predators, I always thought they were a fantastic bang for your buck. You know, they were kind of Vortex price range, but you were getting European glass, and they were very, very nice. I remember I reviewed them, and I actually thought, wow, these things are,
pretty good.
Pay for these things are pretty good.
Yep.
So that's it. We'll have a set of Steiner binos up for grabs, which is pretty exciting.
And there's a bunch of other stuff coming. We'll drip feed that out for people just to tease them along. But there's quite a bit of stuff coming into camp. Some trial gear from a thermal company that's going to come up there, so people can have a look at it. Thermals have only just been allowed to be used in state forest hunting. Can't use them after, you can't hunt in the dark, but you can certainly scout in the dark, so they'll be useful for that. But it'll be interesting to see what people think. So, yeah, it should be an exciting trip. Really looking forward to it. Good luck getting a spot, Jono.
Always could be a camp cook.
Yeah, exactly.
We need to rouse about this. Good point. All right, let's kick on. So, more of a formal welcome, Zeb. So, Zeb Jones, if you don't know Zeb, check his YouTube channel out. This guy's a master of Samba hunting and has proven it not just in the work that you did in your early days with your YouTube channel and all of the things that you posted up there, but you've now moved it into a training program. You're taking people out in guided situations, and it's hugely successful. So it's been a real privilege to watch it. You won't remember this, but some time ago, after I think just as you were trying to position yourself away from sort of amateur YouTube stuff and more into guiding, I was pretty hooked on your gear, and I was bringing a crew from my hunting club down to Victoria, and I was like, I'm going to take a punt here. I'm going to contact Zeb. Zeb's going to probably tell me to piss off. I'm not going to tell him where all the good spots are, but there you were an hour later still chatting to me about where to go and how to go about it, and I just thought that was amazing for you to pass up that sort of information to an unknown. I mean, we do that through our podcast, but there aren't too many people out there giving that sort of information away. So I really did appreciate that help and the opportunity to bring you onto this podcast to have a bit more of a chatty about this was just something I couldn't pass up. So thank you for joining us. I'm looking forward to this chat.
Thanks for the invite. Yeah.
No worries.
So, sharing the experience is what, I want to see people coming down. If you're coming from Queensland, I want to see you have a good experience, not come down here and just walk around the bush for 10 days and then go home and go, Sambar are the ghosts of the bush and we can't find any. And all those Victorians are full of shit. But
well, I might have been down a couple of times, walked around for 10 days.
That might be two different conversations.
So I'm sure that happens a lot. But hey, before we get into some of that detail, how did Zeb come about? Is it your Christian name or is this a nickname?
No. So my full proper name is Zebulon. And Zeb's just an easier version of that, I suppose. Yeah. So the story is that Mum and Dad were watching an old Western back in the day, and there was an Uncle Zebulon, which was a buffalo hunter. So the one that used to shoot the bison for a living, and they thought that was a good name, and so yeah, that's what I got.
What Western was that?
It's called How the West Was Won.
Yeah, I know. So I'm trying to.
So I'm an 80s
yes.
baby, so it must have been maybe
Yeah.
either a late 70s or maybe early 80s.
That was a huge film. That was one of those massive films that they used to make, with, like, epics. It was, yeah.
So it's quite common in the Bible, and it's a Hebrew name, apparently. I'm not religious at all, but I did take a client out last year, and he filled me right in on where my name had come from. So he actually taught me more about it than I knew myself. So
that's what happens when you've got time alone in the bush with new people, right?
Yeah, and so zebra came from, people just assumed that Zeb was short for zebra, and a few people were calling me Zebra, thinking that was my actual full name, and I just sort of let them run with it.
Yeah. And now it's your YouTube
and now
channel name, Zebra Samba Hunting, right?
Yeah,
Adventures
part of the business
like
as well, so,
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Oh, well, that'll clear that up. He's got hair and his real name's Zebulon. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So take us back, if you don't mind, and let's just have a chat about your introduction into hunting. What got you? I mean, you're from Victoria originally, and you've just got the Sambar in the blood. Where did you start? How did you get into it?
So basically, born and raised in Gippsland. My father came from a non-hunting family, but his brothers, sort of a fair bit older than him, did a little bit of bow hunting, a little bit of more shooting than anything, I suppose you'd put it down to, back in those probably early 70s. But when Dad was sort of a teenager, like late teens, into his young sort of manhood, he took up fox shooting because fox pelts were worth some money. And then from that, duck hunting, quail hunting, because he used to run with a Weimaraner. And so Dad, sort of slowly but surely on his own, sort of taught himself all those sorts of skills. And eventually, I think, I'm not 100% sure on where he got the idea to go deer hunting, but he must have seen one day or heard someone talking about them, and went to the shop and bought some old ex-military 308 full wood and open sights and probably a packet of full metal jackets, left over from World War II or whatever. But off he went, and he found out the hard way that, Sambar are hard to find, especially back in the, probably the late 70s, I'd say.
Yeah, right.
And he progressed himself through just hunting and learning from scratch with not really any help. And back in those days, it was a real secret society, the Sambar. So there wasn't really, there certainly wasn't any YouTube or even books or magazines sort of rarely talked about Sambar. So he had to learn the hard way, and he was never very successful. And then when I was probably about 18 months old, we moved to the Northern Territory to work on a big cattle station up there, about 8 hours drive from Alice Springs, north of Alice Springs.
Okay.
Yeah, so my uncle and auntie were managers on a big property up there, and so Mum and Dad went up there with me to sort of help out and have a bit of a lifestyle change. And so we spent about 4 or 5 years up there. Only came back for me to go back to school. So I would say hunting started for me up there, because not much to do but chase lizards and, other little creatures that were silly enough for a 5-year-old to grab hold of. But from there, when we came back to Victoria, I was about 5 or 6, and my first sort of memory of Dad hunting was he came home from the bush one afternoon, and he said he'd shot a stag but couldn't find it, and they were going back the next day to have a look for it. And it was a school night, so it must have been preppies, or I reckon preppies. I would have been 5 years old. and I was begging him to let me go with him to find this stag, and I wasn't allowed to have the day off school, and I still remember it, and it's burnt in my memory that he didn't let me go because they ended up finding it and putting it down, and yeah, so it was his first stag, which was about a 16-inch little Samba, and it wasn't long after that Dad started taking me just on short little hunts for Samba, and just only small ones, but sort of started to drift into rabbit hunting with 22 slug gun, and eventually, I could shoot a shotgun and foxes and ducks. So just started at the bottom and worked our way up. But Sambar really kicked off probably when I was about 8, and we were hunting regularly, weekend sort of hunts, in an old hut, Black Snake Creek hut back in the day, and we struggled to see deer. We were hunting in areas that were heavily hound hunted, and only being 8 years old, I didn't have the legs to do big miles and all the rest of it. So we really struggled, and we didn't shoot anything. And Dad used to let me sort of watch the odd bum run off, or a deer would honk, and you just get a flash of it, and I would say, "Why didn't you shoot it?" And he's like, "I wanted you to see one alive." I said, "I want to see one up close, dead on the ground. Like, start shooting these things, will you?" And after that, he was like, "Yeah, all right," but nothing would stand still. And it wasn't until one day on school holidays that he used to work up the bush cutting fence posts. So he had his finger on the pulse of a little small group of deer that was near his logging coop, and we were driving up there one day, and one happened to stand on the side of the road for us. And back in those days, the gun was never too far from reach, and slipped the bullet in and shot it out the window. And that was the first deer I ever saw dead, and it was just a big old hind. And from there, it was sort of just a slow progression, hunting low country, and no success, just constantly getting honked at, putting deer up, but just hunting the wrong areas. Heavily hunted by hounds, so the deer are really smart. About 14, I shot my first deer, which was a really nice 25-inch stag, and that was on Dad's block where he was cutting posts. And what had happened is he'd been up the bush all week, and the stag was crossing the road and leaving his marks, in the soft soil on the side of the road, the same spot every day. And Dad said, "On Saturday, I'm going to drop you off there at daylight, and he's going to come across that road, and you're going to shoot him." And it's exactly what I did, right on daylight. Wow. So from there, it's I was 14 then, so I shot my first stag at 14, and then we ended up getting onto some good private property up around Omeo and Brenamba, and that's when we really started to learn that we'd been hunting in the wrong areas, because we went from, putting up a deer to the first day we hunted at Brenamba, I think we saw like 6. And it was like, oh, we can pick and choose what we want to shoot here. Like, we don't have to just shoot at the bums disappearing through the bush like the old school way that we'd been hunting. And so I shot a few deer out of there, and then we got onto another really good private property at Dargo through some family, and that's when it really took off, because this place was basically a deer farm. It had hardly been hunted. The hunters that were hunting it were very selective, and it wasn't hard to see, dozens of deer in a day if you did the right thing. And once we started seeing deer, we learned a lot about them, and that farm finch hunting was much more easier than walking through the scrub, trying to, jump a deer out of its bed. And so that's how I started with the Samba. It was basically through Dad. And to tell you the truth, I think he learnt more once I was going with him, because I was reading books and, every magazine. I was reading the articles to see, not so much because the articles were educational, but you could pick up, all right, this bloke tracked it out of its bed, or from the feeding area, and he was side cutting. And I used to come up with all these great ideas at 14, 15 and say to Dad, "Come on, this weekend we're gonna try this." And when we started doing that, it really did start to come together for us. But it took a long time to say that I would say that I was successful. Like, probably around 17 or 18, is when I would have said, yep, I can find a deer when I need to. But,
Wow.
that was, nearly 8 or 9 years of hunting with rarely seeing one.
That's such a good story of, holding it all together. Your dad must be a patient man.
Yeah.
Far
Yeah,
out.
so Dad still never really became successful. Like, as if you want to call success in antlers and inches, Dad shot his biggest stag with me on a guided hunt, and Dad always seemed to find a reason not to shoot them, and I always thought that he liked to see them more than he liked to shoot them, and then actually now that I've had kids, I realise now that I shot a lot and he just watched. And I used to say to Mum, why doesn't Dad shoot them? And she used to say, he wants you to shoot them. He's happy to watch. And I didn't really sink in until I became a father, and now I've got my own boys, that I realised, like, I'm a guide for a business now, but on the weekends I'm guiding my boys onto rabbits and foxes, and I get the satisfaction 100% as much as pulling the trigger myself. So
Yeah, that's awesome. That is, it's fantastic. And you kind of get to that point where I think it's just, you like to see other people succeed just as much as you like to feel the success yourself. You didn't want to see them succeed. Really want to see them do well. My boys are still a bit young in their development, but they'll get there. So they've been, especially my oldest, he's been with me for the last 5, this will be his 5th year, because we go once a year in winter time. And in a year or two he'll be able to be on the rifle. And he's building towards it. But as you said, like first couple of years you couldn't really, just the legs couldn't push it too hard. But every year we're getting a bit further and a bit further along.
Yeah, and I think what I've learned is with the kids is you have to keep it fun. As soon as you start saying, shh, it's, be quiet, and you start to get a bit serious, the fun goes out of it, and then they don't want to go with you again next time. So it's really got to be fun, and it's got to be about them. And if they scare off whatever you're looking for, rabbits, foxes, deer, whatever, then so be it. We can chase, frogs in the bloody pond, or we can go yabbying later on, or, just got to keep it fun to keep them interested.
Yeah, that's too true.
Most definitely. We shot. I shot a little fallow last year with the boy. We shot 2 on a trip. On the second one, he was literally. The fellow was near the car. We were coming back to the car, and I've got a video. He's dancing in the track. He's just there dancing to himself, and I'm trying to get his attention because he's got the ear protection on all the time.
Yeah.
Because I don't want him to be like me. I don't want him to be deaf as a post by the time he's my age. So I'm trying to get his attention because I can see the fallow and he's just dancing on the track. And I literally ran up and grabbed him and kind of went, "Well," I said, "There's a deer in front." And he kind of went, "Oh, there it is." And that was it. It was hilarious. He was literally kind of doing this swaying, dancing to himself as he's walking along. As his little mind's starting to wander, so he starts dancing.
Fun.
Well, you pick up when they start to wander, and I've hunted with adults that can't hold concentration for 15 minutes. This is 2 hours into it, so he's doing it pretty well.
Yeah, I took my little fella. He's now 5. So 2 years ago, I took him to a hunter's camp. Before we were doing it through the podcast, but there were a few fellas there, and it was just good to be around camp. And he was so excited to go hunting with Dad. We're going hunting with Dad, and all we did was stand by the pond and fill it up with rocks for a week. It was great. He loved every bit of it. Now he's 5. He thinks he can outwalk me, which is great. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But the funniest thing happened yesterday was I was out working. I was doing something, and he was sitting at home watching Bear Grylls. And it's one of his favourite programs, as you can imagine, as an outdoory kid. And he turned to his mum. She told me the story this morning. She turned to his mum and said, "You know why I'm watching this? So when I go hunting with Dad and he gets lost, I can keep him alive." Right on, all right, I'm ready for that.
That's cool.
So,
That's
anyway,
awesome.
Kids are fun. It's great to get them involved with sort of stuff. So yeah.
So, mate, tell us a little about the business, and what that's all about.
Yep. So basically, through constant requests on YouTube for people wanting me to take them out, I started a business. Like, it was happening regularly enough that it was nearly, you're knocking people back constantly, saying no,
Yep.
that's not what and I was actually referring them to people that didn't do that as part of their thing. But I mean, I sat down one day and someone had sent me another message. Hey, I want you to take me out. I'm a local. I'm a young bloke. I've got no one in my circle of friends that are hunters. They're all footballers or chasing girls at the pub. And he goes, I want to learn how to hunt. I've watched your videos. I think, you're the man for the job. And I was like, this is a common thing. Like, people are saying they want to hunt, but they don't have a circle around them to teach. And I thought, what do we need in the hunting community is we need new blood, and if we can get that through people that are just picking up on YouTube and going, hey, this looks all right. I'd like to give that a go. And I thought, I need to do my little bit and maybe say yes to some of these people. And so I started looking into setting up a business, a guide business, an education business, and straight away the first thing I looked at was liability insurance. And
You did.
if you know anything about guns and hunting and knives and being in the bush and taking someone out, as soon as you say that, no one wants to know you. So I just went, because I had an ABN already for contract welding, which is my trade, and I just rang my insurance broker and told him what I wanted to do, and he said leave it with him. And anyway, he got back to me after about a week, and he goes, no one wants to touch you, so your best bet is to talk to a big hunting organisation and try and go through them. And I contacted, I think his name's that's bow hunting up in Queensland. Brad Murphy? Does the chittle guiding and that up that way? Yeah. I contacted him through social media and just said, hey, what are you doing? And through a bit of a conversation, it was SSAA, and so I contacted them and got onto the right channels, and I was blown away by the price tag of what they wanted for the cover, and so I put it on the back burner again, and then more requests. And what I decided to do, and I don't know if you've seen, there's one video there where I think I might be even in the rain, and I'm just talking about interest. Like, I've had all this interest, but who would actually put their hand in their pocket if I, pay this big insurance bill and start this business? Who's actually going to just jump on board?
I can say I've seen that. Yep.
Yeah. So from that, I just got huge support. So I was just pretty much confident I'd get my money back, at least, it was $10,500 for the public liability. So I bit the bullet and got the insurance, set up the ABN, got solicitors to write up waivers, and went right through all the rigmarole of setting up a proper business the right way. And another thing I needed was a tour guide licence to operate in national park and state forest in Victoria. So that took a long time too to get that on board, and a lot of backing and forward, because the licensing department said that they'd never seen a hunting business request. So that might raise a few eyebrows.
Okay.
That tells you something about
Victoria.
the others.
It does. We won't go into that, but so I've got that licence now, and set it all up properly, and I've just expanded my range this year too, actually, which is good. But then getting back to it, so it just came from YouTube requests to be taken out for a hunt. So I set up the business, but I didn't want to just do guided Samba hunts, because you guys know Sambar, they don't just hang around each tree, and there's not then there's not lots of them as in trophy size to say that you can come on a trophy deer hunt with me. I wanted it to be more about the young bloke that didn't have mates to take him out. I wanted it to be about the person that wanted to be educated. So I call them guided educational hunter education courses.
Oh, okay.
So
they're just like an individual hunter education course.
Yep. So that's what started out as last year. It was basically one-on-ones. I did some father-son hunts, but it's small groups. Up to about 3 is about as big as I wanted to go. I did mostly one-on-ones. And it was, yes, becoming hunting. We're actively hunting, but I'm not just taking you into a great property and where I've got trail camera photos of, X size stag, and I can walk you into a gully and we're going to shoot it. It was all public land. So, I'm going to be teaching you how to hunt the land that's available to all game licence holders in Victoria. And like anyone that has that game licence has access to, I don't know how many millions of hectares. Like it's got to be a big area in Victoria, and as you guys know, like it's not like that in other states. So we're quite lucky in that way. But in saying that, even though you've got access to it, it doesn't help you to achieve success straight away just because you've got the access. So you need the knowledge to go with it. So my plan was to hunt public land and educate hunters how to, from, what gear you need, what camp gear, hunting gear, how to find areas, when you find the areas, how to hunt them, right down to, if we're successful, how to butcher a deer, how to cape a stag, all the above. It's just it is a guided hunt as such, but I'm teaching you so that you don't have to come with me. It's not something that I want you to have to do every time you go for a hunt, is book a hunt with me. You should be able to book a hunt with me, and after 3 days, have a really good idea of what you need to work on for yourself when you go out on your own. And this year I've sort of stepped away from that, basically because last year I think I did 24 individual hunts. There's about 28 clients all up, but I knocked back that many as well because I just physically couldn't be in the bush any more than I was being in the bush. So from September onwards last year I was full-time hunting. I was not welding at all, and it was 5 hunts a month, and I nearly got divorced over it. So got a young family, and my wife works, so the time at home is more precious to me than the business. So I had to work out a way to still do a bigger volume of clients because I was knocking so many back. I couldn't just say I'll do 2 3-day hunts a week. I just physically can't do that. So I've developed an online course, and I've also got this year a group course, which will be 5 people, and there'll be no rifle, so we won't be actively hunting, but it'll be like a 2-day everything you need to know to get you from the ground to at least be confident in the bush and be confident that you know what you're doing when you're out there and not just fumbling around trying to decide if it's a wallaby track or a deer track. Yeah, so the business is trying to educate more people in this, a more condensed time frame, basically.
New business challenges, eh?
Yeah. So, I mean, especially listen to what you just said then, are you finding people are approaching you for what you might regard as just basic bush skills in many instances?
So, because I do backpack style hunting is what I specialise in. Probably reckon 75% of clients want to backpack, but they might be in a group of mates that rather sit around the fire and drink beer. Yeah. So they go camping, they drink beer, they go out for a bit of a hunt, and they call that their weekend. Whereas one of these guys out of that group of 4 or 5 wants to take it to the next level. wants to hunt, wants the adventure. So
Yeah.
the whole reason why the business is called Zebras Hunting Adventures is it's not, like, for me, hunting is not just the trophy. Like, I know it's probably cliche to say it, and everyone's probably, oh yeah, you shoot big stags. I honestly love the adventure. I love our terrain adds that aspect to it. Backpacking just takes it to a whole new level. So a lot of the clients that I'm getting have started out hunting, might have shot a couple of deer, but they want to bring it up a level.
Oh,
But
okay, yeah.
but they're not confident on their own to do it, or they don't have friends that are even interested in what they're doing. So they've come to me to experience it, because when you start dropping $800 on a sleeping bag, and and the same on a backpack, and then a couple $100 on a inflatable mattress, and so on and so on, you might drop $3 or $4 grand pretty quick. And if you go out and you don't like it, then you've got all this gear that your wife's wondering. So a lot of it is to see if they will enjoy it and if that's what they want to do. But yeah, it's just, I think I'm a little bit of a safety net for them for that first time.
Yeah.
Because my experience, they've seen it on YouTube. They see the extreme. I don't take anyone on my sort of hunts. I sort of dull it down a little bit so it's not so extreme. So we're not kicking out deer beds and camping on the side of hills, killing bull ants all night. But it's, I tend to have a base camp where it's a lot more comfortable. We've got big tarp and we can have a good fire, and it's a nice flat area. And so it's sort of a good introduction into backpacking. But I also do the vehicle-based hunts for the people that aren't up to that level, or they're not interested in that level. So we just take my camper trailer and set up a base camp and hunt like you would with anyone else. But it's basically people that are just, they might have shot a few deer, but most of them sort of tell me that they've shot a couple of deer, but they feel like they were just lucky, more so than they knew what they were doing. And they want to learn either what they're doing wrong or what they need to do right to be able to go home and say, this was a successful hunt because of X, Y, Z. So I have taken some absolute beginner level. You would have seen Aaron and his mother-in-law, Daisy, which was a great experience. He'd never hunted before, ever, never been in the bush. He brought a rifle, he'd been to the range 5 times, and I took him on his first deer hunt, and on the first afternoon we ended up getting on a couple of Sambar, and he got a nice 14-inch stag to open the account with. But all prior to that was, just showing him wallows and deer tracks and rub trees and the different, this is wallaby poo and that's deer poo. And he's like, oh, how do you know? It's like, you don't realise how much knowledge you have until you're with someone that's got none. And then you just, like, my voice was dry from talking to him for the whole day, this is this and this is that. And going through tactics and why we're doing what we're doing. So I've had them from the very base level to I've had blokes that have shot big stags that just wanted to come backpacking for the first time. Everyone.
What a great experience. Yeah. What out, like, so that was the super beginner, and like you're saying, the more experienced just want to try something different. You've had a year of guiding people now, pretty much full on, right? What's some of the really interesting or out there experiences that you might have? Surely people have overstated their capabilities and things like that, or you're finding that everyone's pretty honest and upfront about where they're up to. Like, you must have found some interesting positions.
Yeah, so most people say they're fit, but you're not bush fit until you've been in the bush like a lot. And even I've thought
I've never carried a pack up a mountain.
Oh, true, yeah. It's the weight, it's the hill. Like I remember one client that on the walk out, he said to me, you need to tell future clients about this hill. I said, why is that? And he goes, if you had told me about this hill and this is what we had to do on the way out, I would not have come. And I'm like, we're halfway out. We're nearly there. Like, you've done fine, mate. And he's like, yeah, I'm fine now. I'm doing it. But he goes, if you had told me about it, I certainly wouldn't have done it. So I think in the YouTube, and it's the same with any sort of video that you watch. You watch a forward driving video and you go, that's not steep. But then you see that people can't even walk up the hill. So I think, I make it look easy.
I've seen more than one of your videos of hanging onto trees, Zeb, where you move, going up and down cliffs. Some of that silly stuff. It still shows pretty steep where you're going. Yeah.
Yeah. So fitness is one thing that people say they are, and then they realise that I'm another level of fitness on top of that. And I'm not a gym junkie or anything like that. I don't sort of do much. I do a little bit of mountain biking on the off season, but it's bush fit. It's the only way to get fit properly for hunting. It's carrying that weight. If anything, I do a little bit of carrying my backpack up the bush along four-wheel drive tracks that have got some good inclines and stuff, but that's only when I've got time, and usually I don't have time. So I just usually break myself in the first few hunts, and going regularly. I think I spent 70 days in the bush last year, so 450 Ks on the boots last year, just in the 1 year. So it's a lot of walking. So you just get mentally fit is another thing. I know that the top of the hill's not that far away, but the clients don't. So it's a bit of a mental game sometimes on the way out, where you just sort of got to pump the tyres up a little bit and give them a little rest when they need to, but then push them when you have to. And it's been a good experience that way, is dealing with people's mental states a little bit. And I've been broken myself in the bush, and I've had a guide push me, and I didn't realise what he was doing until I was home, and years later I went, my God, that guide got me out of there without having to, call for a chopper. So I've learnt from that, and I use it myself. So, but yeah, fitness. People tell me that the big eaters is another big one. So I supply the food so that I know that they've got enough on a backpack, and they haven't got too much. But these big eaters load up their pack with all this food, and on the last morning where we normally have breakfast and have a bit of a pack up, we're looking at this big shopping bag full of food that they haven't eaten. And I'm like, I thought you told me you're a big eater. And they're like, I normally am when I'm at work or at home. And I said, that's because you're bored. And you're like, I'm going to eat this and I'm going to eat this. I said, you're up the bush here, and all you're concentrating on is looking for a deer or learning and listening to me. And, you don't get time to eat. And you don't feel hungry at the same time. Yeah.
And of course, if at the end of the evening you've got to prepare it too, if you're used to kind of everything being prepared for you or very easily prepared, you just kind of go, I just can't be bothered. That's it.
Yeah. So they're the main couple of things, but most people are pretty honest, which is good.
One of the things we asked a couple of other guests at Victoria based is that if you're coming down from Queensland, because one of the questions we get asked, or we get not more than once, but how do I start? So someone goes, I've bought some stuff, I've got some stuff, I've even got the R license, or I've got a place to go, but my confidence is just there's too many unknowns for me to go forward.
Yeah.
So if you had someone contact you from Queensland, what would be kind of your advice for them to get down, even if they weren't going to come to see you?
Yeah.
How would they get that enough information to give it a go?
Yeah, so that's a hard one, because most people are pretty tight-lipped about areas where to go.
Yeah.
I'm not, believe it or not. I'm pretty open about giving away, I wouldn't say I give away my A-grade spots, but I give away my A- spots, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Because the way I look at it, I haven't got any spots that aren't getting hunted by someone else. I've got some spots that are rarely hunted by other people, but it's more because of the remoteness of it rather than anything else. So there's plenty of spots that I know there's plenty of deer, but there's also plenty of hunters. So what's a couple more hunters? And if someone's contacted me all the way from Queensland, how regularly are you going to hunt it? So it's not really going to put a massive amount of extra hunting pressure on it. So I'm pretty open with that sort of stuff. And also within my Patreon platform that I've got now, which is YouTube support and all the rest of it, I've created a tier in there which is available to 3 people at any one time, which is called the Mentor tier. And you sign up to that tier, and that gives you my phone number, email address, and basically I ring you straight away and we talk about what you want to achieve. And some of these people are intestaters. They say, hey, look, I want to come down to Victoria, I want to go backpack hunting, rah, rah, rah. And within that tier, I give you a spot, literally like a pin on a Google map. I give you the position of wallows, areas to glass, places to camp, where to park your car, where to walk in, how long it's going to take, where you can get water, all the rest of it. And so that's a good way. That's just through me. It's $250 a month, which might sound like a lot of if you take it for a full year, but I've only had one client go past 1 month. So, $250 gets you an area, gets you all the knowledge that you need. And within that month, you could hunt that area, and I encourage you to ring me and say, hey, how'd you go? And, you might be able to say, oh, yeah, look, I went into where you said, but there was no sign there. And so I went up here, but I couldn't. And I can talk you through it because these are areas that I know intimately, and I can sort of say, yeah, well, this is where you went wrong or whatever, or this is what I think you should have done otherwise. I've had, I think, 4 clients take that up. 2 have shot deer. 1 came all the way from, I think it was Newcastle, came down, shot his first Samba hind. And I had another young bloke come down, he shot 2 Samba stags. So they were both wrapped. But getting back to the question, because that's probably a bit off topic.
That's a great service though, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of multiple ways to help people, because not everyone can come down and go one-on-one with me. Not everyone can get down to a group course, so that's why I developed the online course. That's a great thing too. Like it's, I think there's 16 modules in that, and it goes right through, shot placement, caping, butchering, finding sign, finding areas. I could rattle them all off, but it's from start to finish. If you buy that course and get to the end of it and you haven't learnt something, then I think you need to read it again, because I've got one presentation in there that was just tips and tricks, and it's a full bloody PDF of just all these little thoughts that popped into my head when I wrote tips and tricks. I'm like, oh, you need to know this and this and that, and these are all things that you don't ever read in a book. This is stuff you learn after 25 years of hunting Samba. So with online course, group course, you can't get there. But the worst thing is picking a spot, because we've got such a large area. How do you pick a spot? And there is no easy way. There's no magic answer. And finding areas to hunt and good areas to hunt. Like I've got 25 years of hunting these things an hour up the road. Like an hour I'm backpacking, 2 hours I'm on the other side. So I've hunted hundreds of spots, and I've got probably 5 good ones. So for you to come down to Queensland looking at a map and going, I'm going there, it's like throwing a dart into the dark. You don't know where it's going to land, but you've got to just learn from that first experience, I suppose. Without local knowledge, it'd be the same as me coming up there looking for a red deer. The best thing I could do was probably sit on a hill and listen. Can't do that with Samba. You've got to physically look for them. And there's no shortcuts. If you're going to go alone from interstate into Victoria with no background knowledge of an area, I'd say the first few trips you do are going to be either bankrupt or, you're going to bust, because you're not going to know where to go. There's too much area, and there's so much crap amongst the good stuff that you'd be very lucky to put your pin on a really good spot. So it's not something that's going to happen easily without some sort of background knowledge from locals.
Yeah, Zeb, are they fair statements to be made for a Queenslander coming down that is trying to chase a stag? Because that would be different comments for, if you just wanted to shoot your first Samba and you wanted to chase a hind.
Yep.
They're different answers though, wouldn't they?
So, if, shooting a hind in state forest or, public land for someone that's maybe never hunted a Samba, so, you haven't got the skill set, you can hunt red and fallow as much as you like. They don't really... They're not apples and apples, and even reds and fallows aren't apples and apples, but they're closer.
Not at all.
But they're closer. Samba are completely different again, and it's basically because of the terrain. The terrain is so much harder. So to shoot even a Samba hind is still a trophy for someone that's coming from Queensland that doesn't have... if I showed you a map, how are you going to pick a spot? Now, I could show you one particular map where you could throw a dartboard at it and you will find deer sign. But is it going to be a good spot? Probably not. Because the good spots are few and far between. The time of year that you go to some of these spots can make the difference between seeing several deer and seeing none. Your high plain country is, a classic example of that. Like summertime growth where that green pick pops up they go. But winter time comes in and down that, and they leave that same area. So timing, but private property fringe hunting is probably more like hunting reds and fallow because they're attracted to that improved pasture. So it's a whole different ball game, and that's basically why I don't hunt farm fringes, because it's not a challenge. That's not the Samba challenge for me. Samba challenge is forest deer, where you're in remote areas and the deer are doing what deer do. They're not influenced by agricultural land or that sort of thing. I've done a lot of it, don't get me wrong, and I've shot a lot of big deer doing it, but it's a great way to get meat because usually there's a bigger population of deer close to the fringe. But I just got sick of farm fringe being poached, and then when they legalised spotlighting, it just all changed for me, and I just give up on it. And basically now, if I hunt for myself, I go backpacking.
So do you not do any private land stuff now, or is it all public?
Look, I've still got access to a lot of private land, but unless I'm looking for meat where I can shoot it in the paddock, and then literally I'm not even hunting, I just would go there in a spotlight. So... because I'm basically going to the supermarket to get a meat animal, and I can pick the animal size and where it is. So that's an easy extraction, you know what I mean? And I keep my trophy hunting and the adventure side of it to backpacking, where, I go hunting all year and shoot 1 or 2 deer if I'm lucky. I just don't pull the trigger on everything. Fairly selective.
It's a long way to walk it out, right?
Yeah. But it's hard. It's hard for the interstater to do it in a trip. It's going to take multiple trips without any sort of background. Hey, go to this spot. I was there last year and it was good. Or I know this bloke. You can take you out for a look or something.
So I can agree to that. My first trip down there, we bought a club down there. Pretty much none of us had any experience with it. We just wanted to have a go. One of the fellas that came with us was brought up in Victoria, but he left it a long time ago. So we had some basics and some fundamentals, and he'd chase them around as a young fella, but it had been quite some time, and we ended up going in and, on my very first day, on my very first walk, I walked up a ridge and bumped straight into a big black Samba stag, and I wasn't ready for it. It freaked me out completely. It stood right up in front of me, 10 metres away, then stopped down behind a tree, and off it went, and I just stood there dumbfounded by the size and, the colour of it, the whole thing. And I would have seen 4 or 5 deer over that trip, but not one of them was I in a position to be able to shoot. They'd seen me or heard me before I got on them, so I got pretty common. Well. I firmly imprinted in my brain as the back end of a Samba. as they pedal off up the hill.
The big orange rump.
And it was a really productive little system that we were in, and it was great. We went back there next year, nothing. We found out later on it had been wiped out by professional shooters.
Yeah.
And we jumped the valley about 3/4 of the way through the trip and into another river system, and all of a sudden we were onto them again. So that local knowledge was so important, like you say. And here I am after 2 trips. I haven't taken one. I've seen plenty, but I've never been in a position to really take one. So I'm looking forward to getting back and doing it again. But it's spot on advice, that's for sure.
Yeah. I think that's.
So what's the duration of a normal backpack hunt? What are you with you taking clients out, or you're doing your courses? What is it?
3
a 3-day or a 5-day? Or
3-day backpack is about all everyone can handle. Any longer, we've got to change our hunting system. So you go from actively looking to do a lot more sit and glass, because you got to conserve their feet usually. I've got a good mate that I hunted with in Queensland for the Reds, and he's now over in WA. And every time the first time he came, he goes, "I want to come over, I want to do 9 days." And I'm like, "I've never done 9 days. I've done 5, and I was worn out. We'll just do 4." And he was actually disappointed with me, because he was making this big effort to come down here for 4 days of hunting. And I said, "Look, we'll do 4. We'll come out. We'll freshen up, have a day at home, and if you want to go back, we'll go back for another 3 or 4. We did 4, and he was done. If you're not used to the country, I'm hunting big country, steep. You can hunt farm fringe, and I'm sure you can hunt it for 9 days in a row, no dramas, and you'd be hunting them very similar to like a red or a fallow. But when you're backpacking or pushing back into this bigger country, you've got to be super fit to be able to do multiple days. And when I do a day hunt, I leave before daylight and I'm back after dark. Like, I don't come back to camp for a siesta and a good feed and all the rest of it. I'm out there because you don't have the daylight in winter to be bothered. Like, it's a wasted. I don't like waste my walking. So I like to do hunts that encompass all new areas the whole day. So I like to go like this. I don't like to go up and back, because I figure I've already hunted that. I don't need to be walking back through it. It gives you more chance of running into a stag or what you're looking for if you're covering new, fresh country. Backpack is 3 days. I will extend it, but like I said, you'll have to change the system that you use, and it'll be more looking for vantage points and glassing a lot more, so that you're conserving your energy.
So that's 2 nights, basically.
That'd be, we normally go in the night before.
Okay, you go in and
so you
start
3
in
nights.
there.
Yeah. So what I was doing last year was walking in the dark, and what I found was that was better, so clients didn't see where they were going. Not to hide the spot, so that they didn't realise how far in or steep and down, because when it's dark, you're limited to 20 or 30 yards of headlight. Yeah. And when they get up in the morning, they're like, "Whoa, where did we come down?" I'm like, "Oh, through there. We've got to go back up there." I'm like, "Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about that until 2 days from now." But the group courses that I will be running, that'll be over 2 days, but also so it's over a weekend. I'll meet and greet you on a Friday afternoon, and then it'll be a full day and then a half a day on the Sunday. And that should be enough to get the basics across there.
Okay. So look, we a lot of people we speak to are really starting from fresh. So what's my Samba kit look like?
Yeah.
So what's that kit look like?
So lightweight, because it's steep, you don't want to be carting around weight that it's not necessary. Water, so you need a big bladder of water. I like to carry 3 litres of water, so that's where my weight is in the water, because a lot of the time I'm hunting high and away from the river. I think a lot of the new hunters start around the creeks and the rivers because that's where they see the sign. And I've even had blokes message me and say, "Oh, look at all this sign," and they're showing me, video footage of all these game trails and all this, poo on the ground and rubs. I'm like, it looks like the creek flats, mate. And they're like, yeah, been waiting here all day and I haven't seen a thing. And I'm like, it's because they're up the hill, bedded down and watching you. So you know what I mean? Like, I'm up the hill.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah. So lightweight, I basically carry not much. Like, I'm really.
You're
really
an
bad
ultralight guy, right? Half your videos are about ultralight kit.
I've learnt that, although you can carry heavier, it slows you down so much. And my style of hunting is, like I said, if I'm hunting for myself, I'm backpacking. So I don't like to camp at a specific place now for myself. I camp wherever I finish for the day. Whether that's in a comfortable spot or not, that's just where I stop. I usually find something decent, but I've had some pretty interesting sleeps on the side of the hill with rocks on the low side so I don't roll down off the hill. Or up against a tree, or, you know what I mean, like curled up in a ball because it's the only flat spot I've got, the size of a deer bed. But yeah, so I carry water, a bone saw to lighten the load. If I shoot a stag, I can cut the skull down. I only ever carry scalpels, blades. Yep, so it's lighter again. Obviously some matches and some fire lighter as an emergency. Always carry a PLB, emergency beacon. That's a must. What else is in there?
What cooking gear are you saying? You're saying you're carrying a bit of firelighting stuff, but are you jet boiling or are you cooking on an open flame or cold camping?
I do a little bit of everything. I don't carry jet boil because they're too heavy. I've got a BRS 3000, which is like this tiny little titanium cooker that weighs 25 grams, but it's got a really good output and will quickly boil water. Titanium pot, 550 mil. A little 100 gram gas bottle fits perfectly inside it. I don't bring the lid.
Go on.
Anything that it's not going to help me kill a deer, I don't bring it. But I only carry that if I'm backpacking. But if I was just hunting for the day from the camp, it'd literally be like a knife, some game bags, some water, some food. That's about it. Like, you got to have room for the meat, I suppose. But I don't have a GPS. I basically use my phone with the Venza mapping. If I'm not using that, I upload Google before I get to out of reception, and I use that as well. But I've been in the bush so often, and I generally hunt similar areas that it's all up in here, and I don't find myself actually having to look at a map unless it's dark and I'm trying to make my way back to camp or something like that. I think that's something you can't learn without being in the bush a lot on your own, is to have that confidence, like in the dark, to be able to navigate through that sort of terrain back to camp. Like, it can be a stressful thing, and I think where a lot of new hunters fall down is they're leaving to get back to camp before it gets dark, and they've picked up their stuff and they've walked away, and 10 minutes later the big stage walked out from where they were watching. But, I try not to carry anything that's not helping me, and if I don't use it one trip, it doesn't come the next trip.
What kind of pack are you carrying? Sorry,
I got a Hyperlight backpack. So there, I brought that out of Katoomba in the Blue Mountains. There's a hiking shop there, so it's basically an ultralight. I don't even know. It's like a Cuban fibre sort of a jobby. I don't know what the material is, but the backpack itself is 50 litres, I think. 40 litres in a waterproof sock, like a dry bag. And then it's got like a 10-litre pocket on the outside that's open, so it's obviously not waterproof. But it weighs like 950 grams empty. So it's just stupid light. But it's basically designed for those ultralight true hikers in the States. And that's where I get a lot of my ideas from to be lightweight, is from those through hikers in the States, because those guys actually cut the end off their toothbrush, and you know what I mean. Like they get their toothpaste and squeeze it out into Glad wrap, and then freeze it and cut it into tiny little portions, and then they, you know, so they're not taking a tube and all this sort of stuff. But I just don't take toothpaste.
3 days you can go without it. Bit of ash.
Yeah, I take a toothbrush with toothpaste jammed in it, and you get a couple of goes with it.
That's right. Just don't wash it afterwards, and
That's right. Yeah.
And what kind of rifle do you carry?
At the moment, I've got a Tikka 3006 that I brought for clients to borrow. So if you were coming from Queensland or Tasmania, WA, and you wanted to fly down and didn't want to have the hassle of bringing your rifle, I brought that rifle so people could borrow it. And at the moment, that's the only rifle that I've got that's a Samba calibre. I've got a 300 Win Mag at Gunsmith in Queensland at the moment, getting a new barrel put on it. And that's a Winchester Model 70 Extreme Weather. And that's sitting in a Macmillan Game Hunter stock. So it's sort of going to be a semi-custom jobby by the end. But yeah, 300 Win Mag is probably what I'll be using when I get back to hunting for myself one day.
But you're finding the 3006 for your customers that are coming down as a suitable calibre?
Yeah, well, I did a bit of research, and apparently the US Army adopted the 3006 because they believed it was a calibre that an inexperienced rifleman could shoot all day long and not form any sort of bad habits. But it was sort of the upper limit of that. And with Sambar, I believe big is better. So 3006 with a 180 grain projectile is about what people can handle. And it's also, you know, it's a decent sized calibre that you still got a little bit of punch out to, you know, probably 400 yards or so.
And the shots, are they long shots or normally pretty close?
I've only shot one deer with this 3006, and that was for a client last year that wasn't confident shooting that distance, and he wanted meat to take home, and he goes, if you could shoot that deer, that'd be really good. And so I took a shot, and it was 475 yards, and smoked it one shot. So yeah, it's definitely full pass-through too, by the way. So it's with a 178 grain ELDX. So I was quite impressed, and I think I'm learning because I've always been a big gun sort of a guy for Samba, and this last year watching deer get shot with 308s and 7mm08s and 3006s, and it's really opened my eyes up that maybe the calibre is not as important as I thought it was. And I think I'm probably tending on the old school thinking of big ball, big bullet, shoot them up the bum as they run through the scrub. Sort of, I've still got that mentality, I think.
So minimum calibre is 270, correct?
270 with a 130 grainer, yeah. Yep.
And what's your usual distance? Are you usually at that longer range, or is it up close and personal?
So I think of all the deer, I had someone ask me the other day because they were talking about a 300 rum and they wanted, you know, to shoot 230 burgers and all this, and it was only shooting 1-inch groups, and he wanted it to shoot better. And I said, how far do you want to shoot to? And he's like, 500 yards. I want to be confident at 500 yards. I said, well, 1-inch gun is going to shoot groups like that at 500 yards if you do your
5 inches, yeah.
That's right. So I said to him, like, that's plenty good enough. And he goes, well, what about you? Like, what's your longest shot? And I said, well, my longest shot, because I wanted it to be, was 640 yards. My next longest shot was 450. And the next one after that was 360. And then after that, it's like down in the 200s. And I reckon 90% of my deer are shot under 100. So unless you go looking for long-range hunting, you will shoot most of your Sambar, I'm guessing, under 200 yards. Yeah. So calibre, I think, now that I think about it, calibre's not as important at those ranges if you're, you know, capable of putting that bullet in that, you know, that sort of size. Yeah. Big calibres matter at distance. You don't go shooting a Samba deer at 800 yards with a 308. You go and buy a rum or a 338, something or other, a lap or another rum. But if that's what you're going to do, you're going to be looking for that range of shots. You're going to build a gun that's capable.
But for for most of your clients, it's that 100 to 200. That's
Most of my clients say they're comfortable to about 300, but they prefer it to be closer. So that's what I'm always aiming. Like we've probably missed opportunities because of that. But the hunting experience is amplified if you try to get closer. So no one's ever gone, I wish I had just shot it at 450 and not tried to get in closer. Right? Yeah, it's always a better hunt anyway.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Get close.
And I was going to say, optics-wise, do you have sort of a recommendation for people out there?
Yeah, so scopes, I believe everyone should really be hunting with a dial-up scope. And I know that might be a new thought, but I run VX5s and VX6 Leopolds on my rifles. And since I've been using the dial-up, I've realised how inaccurate holdover is when you're trying to take a shot at, say 300 or 400 metres, on a Samba deer, you're with a 30-06, you're doing backline holds and above the back holds at 400 and all this sort of stuff. I don't think you can be accurate enough with your aiming. The rifle might be accurate enough at that distance, but your aiming's not good enough. So when you start doing this dial thing, which was only new to me probably 3 or 4 years ago, I started to realise that when you can just put the crosshair exactly where you want to aim because you've dialed to the right distance, your group sizes are tiny, right? And it makes you a much more accurate rifleman, I think. So I definitely think, and you might say, well, I don't shoot that far out, but there's always going to be that one time where you might be tempted to take that shot, or you could possibly wound a deer and it moves out further past your comfort zone. And when you start having to lob them in, especially like 30-06, it's dropping, 20 inches at 400 yards or maybe even more. If you can dial that, it just takes all that out of it. And you can still keep your ranges into 300 yards, but if you do happen to have an opportunity where you just can't get closer, or you've got a wounded deer at a distance that you can just dial it. It's a more accurate way of aiming, is what I'm trying to get at. And I love the Leopold. The VX5, I believe, is a great quality for the price. I've got the VX6, and I think if I was going to buy another one, I'd just go VX5 again. 3 to 15 by 44. And I love the red dot.
That's got the CDL.
CDS, yep.
Yeah, CDS turrets on them,
Yep. So you send away for your custom dial, which the first one's free after you've done your load development or you've picked your factory ammo. And I tell you what, I've got like $3 or $4 in the shed and they work perfectly. I was shooting out to 750 yards, just no dramas at all. Whereas doing a holdover at that distance, you're going to have to walk your bullets in from splash. It's just with a dial-up scope, you should expect a first round hit. And when you're hunting, that's what you want, isn't it? You want that first one in the right spot. So I love the red dot. So the Leopold have got what they call the fire dot. And for any sort of hunting, I've sort of got to the point where I learnt that the eye picks up the dot a lot quicker than a crosshair. And it actually translates the information subconsciously. So I've been running a red dot since 2008. Not as in a red dot low power, like an illuminated dot magnified.
Yeah, illuminated reticle. Yep.
So I started with a Schmidt & Bender 3 to 12 Zenith was the first one that got introduced to me, and I was just like, wow, this is the best thing ever. Especially for moving targets. It just, that dot seems to just fixate on exactly where you want, and your brain just sets the trigger when it sort of floats in that right spot. There's no computing angles. I just find it much more natural. That's for scopes.
Yeah, I actually broke a CDL5, so
Is that the one at the Pilgrim one?
Yeah, broke one. So I had one. My 36. It was a lovely scope until I broke it. So then it got repaired, and then it almost broke it again. So I went, no, we're going to move it on. So what I did, because I'm a lefty, and I had it slung on my shoulder, the turret would catch on the sling.
Yep.
And we were, one afternoon, we got on these goats, and I jumped out and I went, hang on, that's not right.
No.
Missing.
So literally we had to, once the other guys shot up the goats and got them on the ground, we had to line it up on a tree for 100, get it right, and I had taped it, taped it together, and that was it. It worked. Shot a heap of mob a few days later, but it was all gaff tape up because the turret tore off, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Hey Zeb, another question for you. A lot of gear, clothing gear, jackets, warm gear, thermals, all of that sort of stuff on the market nowadays compared to probably what there was 10 years ago.
Yep.
What have you seen? You would have seen it all now. And this is not a brand bashing exercise, but I'm interested in what lasts the distance. What gear should people be looking at? What's your recommendation on what sort of lasts in that country up there? Or is it all much the same?
No, it's not the same. So I started out with Stony Creek and Hunt Tech, and that was all good back in the day. And my biggest problem is being 6'4". I've got long arms and long legs, and none of these guys supplied a tall size. So I was actually getting my grandmother to sew about 6 inches into the cuff of my pants so that, the dirt wasn't going in the top of my boots and that sort of thing, and putting up with, my shirt stopping here and all that sort of stuff. So when I found Sitka Gear did tall sizes, I went to Sitka Gear and splashed a heap of cash over there, and I've been running that gear for about 4 years now, and it's expensive as hell, but it is top quality gear. I've seen clients with Kuyu gear, which is similar quality, and it's actually, I think, designed by the same guy. He crossed over from Sitka to start Kuyu, so very similar quality. The garments that we got nowadays are so lightweight but still warm. It's got these great little insulation layers in them, and they compact to tiny little. If you're not wearing it, it's not taking up bulk out of your backpack if you're not wearing it. But I think everything's got its price point, hasn't it? Like, there's some other gear that's a lot cheaper that's probably not going to last as long or be as good, but if you're on a budget, I think it's all pretty good. I don't think these days there's any really bad stuff anymore. I think everyone's quality's, at least midway. I think then there's a couple of brands that I mentioned that are just another step ahead, but you do pay probably 2 or 3 times the price. You know what I mean?
So your cheaper stuff is it's not gonna kill you, but you're not gonna use it next year. It's probably
look,
or
and it all depends on. You got to remember, I'm hunting regularly. Even when I wasn't guiding, I was hunting regularly, and I hunt pretty rough terrain as well. So the average guy probably only hunts maybe 3 or 4 times a year. The cheaper stuff's probably going to last him longer than my expensive gear because I'm in the bush more often. If you're going to be in the bush as often as me, you're not even going to blink at Sitka's prices because the gear's going to last you. You know what I mean? Like, you buy once, cry once sort of thing. And that's the case with Sitka gear and those top brands is... the quality is there, so it's justified in the price. Could be cheaper though.
Footwear and boots.
Footwear must be. Look, I don't want to say just European, but European leather boots is where the benchmark is. So Zamberland, Lower. I think Crispy might be made in the US now. I don't know.
Yeah,
so if you're looking at those, Meindl. You can't go wrong. When you start dropping down into those more sort of synthetic sort of style, high-techs or, expect if you're going to be hunting regularly, they're just going to wear out.
Yeah.
I learnt a long time ago that good quality boots are probably the first thing you need to invest in when you're hunting Samba. So when I was 17, I think I bought a $550 pair of Meandles, and I think I got 15 years out of those boots before I threw them in the bin. I resold them at one stage, so I literally wore the sole off them. The rest of them were still good, to the point where I bought another pair, and I think they were 7 years old because my hunting was increasing, obviously. They were 7 years old before I retired them, and I've still got them in the cupboard. I could wear them tomorrow, but now I wear lower Tibets is what I've got at the moment. So I'm on my second pair of them, and 450 Ks in the bush last year, and they're still good for this year. The only thing that's going to happen to them is they're going to round off the edges on the soles, and they're going to become, less grippy, but the leather and everything's just top notch. You can't, and the Gore-Tex lining too. You must have waterproof boots in Victoria. You can't have wet boots on a cold winter's morning, otherwise you're not going to have fun. So I'd start with quality boots.
I think one of the things that, it's what you've been saying all the way through is that for most of us, what we deal with is heat.
Yep.
So it's not particularly, it's hilly, but it's not mountainous.
No.
And so the challenge for us is heat, how to manage heat.
And grass seeds.
And that kind of stuff. That's what it's the scratchy, shitty stuff like that. How do you manage heat? You're talking about really a wholly, and a whole different, I suppose. It's not next level up, but it's a whole different wheel spinning in terms of what you're looking at. So and there's those crossover brands, but for most people, you could probably get away with it once or twice, but if it was going to be your thing, you'd have to really consider what kind of investment you want to make and how much and where you want to start. And I mean, boots is always a pretty good place to go. So I've literally just gone to lower from Zamberland, but I've gone the other way. I've gone synthetics and that stuff because I've always had really heavy leather boots, but on the territory trip, I was advised to go synthetics because it's completely different again. I went a pair of one synthetics, and I wear them up here in Queensland. So impressed with them, but I got the ones that weren't lined, so they can't handle water. They are a dry weather boot. So I bought the Z6s as a wet weather version, But and that's just simply reflective of the kind of terrain that's going on. But I think that's a really important point you're saying, is that not only is it the kind of what you expect, but also how often you're doing it. You as you said, you're out there a number of days a year.
I can't have gear failing.
To be at you need your gear to be at a very, very high level, and obviously, so there's an investment there to be made, but I suppose it's the balance of what that investment is.
Yeah, and even before that, this is my hobby. I don't have a boat. I don't go fishing. I go trout fishing, or I'll jump in a boat with a mate once or twice a year at the most. I don't, this is what I do. So, if you're a golf player, you get a good set of golf clubs that are custom made to your height and all the rest of it, and you have a caddy or a cart, it depends on the level of commitment that you're going into. Like, I'm at the level where I buy the best gear, and usually it's the most expensive, unfortunately. But if I buy the cheaper stuff, I end up buying it again.
Yeah.
And I've been there when I was younger, so...
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I started with army disposal stuff. That's where I started, because that's what I could afford, I remember the first sleeping bag I bought, proper sleeping bag I bought it when I was 18, and literally I had that thing for over 25 years until those goose down feathers, but it was just a ball, how you try to roll it out flat. It just had gone to gone back to being like a goose again. So that's it. So I mean, I think that's a really important point. It's about what kind of not only what you're being exposed to, but the frequency of your exposure. And what do you expect out of it? You know, most people, if they went down and did a 3 to 4 day hunt out of a backpack and, you know, saw a couple of deer and had an opportunity, that they'd regard that as something very special, whereas you're probably not even, you know, you're still asleep for those 4 days before compared to most people.
Footwear I found was the biggest thing for clients to complain about after day one. So if they didn't have good quality footwear, they weren't hunting the second day. Like, they were blistered up, they were sore, they had hot marks on their feet. So I saw some horrendous blisters that just make you cringe. And it's purely just because of the quality of the boot. But also, your feet, if you're not used to the terrain, your feet aren't tough. Like, I've got calluses on my feet like that are bad. But that's why I don't get blisters. It's because my feet are tough. And so if you're only hunting irregularly, and you only hunt every so often, and then you have poor quality footwear, you come for a hunt with me, you're going to go home with some scars.
Hey, Zeb, got another sideways question for you. You went through all of the light backpacking bits and pieces. You've really cut away all of the gear, and then you decided you wanted to video. So you've just added all of that weight back in with camera gear. Was that how you compensated, or what was the deal?
100%.
Tell us a bit about that journey, if you don't mind, for the budding YouTube, recorder, someone that's putting their gear out there. What are the gotchas that you've come across and gear that you use there?
So it's is it called an oxymoron, where you try to be lightweight and then you carry a kilo worth of camera and a kilo worth of carbon fibre tripod just to video.
Batteries, iPads, more batteries.
So I keep it pretty simple. Basically, it's a Nikon P950 camera and I think it's a Suri carbon fibre tripod. So I double the tripod as a shooting stick if I have to. I can put a yoke on the top of it for a bit more of a steady rest. But then everything else is filmed on my Samsung. So I don't carry a GoPro or spare batteries or anything like that. Definitely no laptop. But when I did go to that ultralight setup, it was to drop weight so I could carry weight. So I dropped 3.5 kilos out of my sleep system and backpack just so I could carry 2 kilos of camera gear and tripod.
Thought you might say that.
But so, you see some of these guys that are doing these other YouTube videos and they've got drones and GoPros and they're just taking it to a whole nother level of, experience, I suppose, for the viewer. But I've found that with the camera that's in these an S22 or whatever, is exceptional. And then all my live deer footage is done on the Nikon. So that's got the big zoom to drag in. So, you might be looking at a full frame of a deer, but it's at 400 yards for me. So, that's where my quality of my videos really jumped up from phone scoping. So I had a phone scope set up onto my binos, so 10 power, and then once I brought that Nikon and I had 83 power optical zoom, it just I think it brought my videos up another notch.
They're heavy though.
Progressed a lot. Yeah, kilo.
They're a big camera. They're a big camera.
Kilo camera. Yeah.
Yeah,
and they're a big body camera too.
They are, yeah. But it's got the stabilisation in it. It's got the zoom that I needed. It's got good battery life. And if you're going to do it, you've got to get the good quality footage. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with, there's a bunch of other blokes on YouTube doing the same thing I'm doing, but, if they haven't got the good gear, you can really see the quality difference, I think, once you... and you got to mount it on a tripod, otherwise it's not steady enough, and all the rest of it. So once you're in that high optics,
I got a 3-camera rig, and it's just you just get yourself ready for a day hunt, and then you just go, okay, now I've got to load all this stuff in there, and it just just wait. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Try to keep it to a minimum.
No, fair enough. I have one other question. I'm sure the other guys have got some as well, but I'm monopolising the questions at the moment. You must have I call it a proud dad moment, but it's a proud customer moment. This one springs to mind. If you can see it, she's won the award in this Wild Deer magazine, Best Story of 2023, guided by Zeb. That's a front page article of the work that you're doing. So a hell of a testament to the effort that's gone into it. Got to be a pretty cool thing to see in a magazine. Maybe you don't subscribe to it and didn't even know it was there. I don't know. But she's picked up a nice Swazi jacket off you.
Have you seen what she won this week? She won a guided tar hunt with Chris McCarthy over in New Zealand, worth $11,500.
Wow,
for
amazing.
I think it was Story of the Year or something.
Is that right? Yeah, I noticed it was. It was Story of the Year, and then they pointed me to this article, which I just happened to have on the shelf there while we're talking, so I dragged it down for another look. But, that's a pretty cool moment. Yeah, that's a pretty cool moment for you to be able to share.
Unbelievable hunt, that one. Like that was my first client.
Really?
I couldn't have scripted it any better. It was just exactly what she wanted, and it all worked out. There wasn't one leaf out of place on that whole hunt. It was incredible.
That's awesome. Well done.
So what's a good time of year? So, I mean, you've got, again, people are going to be listening and thinking, okay, I'm going to have a crack at this. So what's a good time of year?
Well, bring your winter woolies, end of July, start of August. After the big snow dump, that's when I want to be in the bush after that snow dump. So
in the snow?
Big tip. No, not in the snow, below the snow, but the snow drives them down off the tops.
Oh, okay.
That cold weather. You imagine having the whole hill as available for the deer to live on, and then all of a sudden a third of it gets covered in a metre of snow. All those deer have to go somewhere, so they generally trickle down into the valleys and just bump up the deer numbers in those valleys that are underneath the snow line. So.
And how long is it obviously that snow doesn't last so long, but how far into the year would you go before you'd say, look, it's probably not worth your while coming down? Or is it a full year type of thing?
Samba, obviously you can hunt them in state forests all year round.
Yeah.
National Park, it gets shut down on the 15th of December to the 15th of February. I generally don't hunt in the warmer months because it's so hard work. You can't carry enough water. Snakes, obviously. It's just hard, hot, sweaty work. And if you do shoot something, you've got no time to get it out. If you shoot.
So, and when is that? When are you thinking? When do you kind of draw the line on that?
I hunted right into.
I know each year is going to be.
Yeah, so I hunted clients through to the end of November last year, and that was too long for me.
Okay.
Yeah,
too long.
The biggest thing at that time of the year is the length of the day. So you're hunting at 5:30 in the morning, and you're finished by 8:30, and then you're hanging around to 7:30 to go hunting again because the middle part of the day is too hot to walk around in, and it's unproductive. The deer at that time of year have got all the spring feed, so. What I found is, and this is something that I learnt this year, spending so much time in the bush, I actually learned a lot for myself, was that later part of the year, the feed has got, and this is just my it's not scientific or anything, but it's my understanding that the deer had more nutritious feed at that time of year, so they didn't have to feed for as long to get what they needed. So although the days are longer, and the nights are shorter, you would assume they'd be having to feed more in the daylight, but they weren't. They were actually bedding up quite early in the morning, and I believed it was because the amount of feed that they had available to them and the quality of it, they didn't have to search for it, and they could just, each mouthful was just heaps of good nutritious food, so then they were having to bed down earlier so they could ruminate. So I found...
sorry, mate.
It's just the hunting was short-lived in the morning, and shorter in the afternoon, and then you had this 8-hour gap in the middle, which was just fishing or sitting around in camp. So I prefer the cooler months.
So what? And what's that? October. That really is. Yeah. After that, it's no.
Well, it's still good hunting. It's just there's a lot of downtime. So for me, with a client, you're paying to hunt, to sit in camp for 5 or 6 hours. To me, it feels like I'm wasting their time a little bit. So where it's still good hunting, but it's condensed to those couple of hours. And it's like, whereas in winter, in August, July, August, June even, but like July and August, we will hunt all hours of daylight and expect to see deer at every hour of the day, apart from maybe 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. You know what I mean? Where you can sort of sit down, have lunch, have a bit of a break, but be somewhere set up for 3 o'clock onwards. We're going to start seeing deer out feeding again.
And you don't get all fidgety.
Not quite understand, not having that much experience with the way the heat comes up. So around September, October, really you're losing that, and it's becoming more of a morning and afternoon type thing.
Yeah. So, and that's more to do with the feed that's available to the deer. September's a great time still. The deer are rutting still a little bit, and the stags are very active. Into October as well. But once you sort of push into November, basically all the rutting activity's finished. The stags sort of go off solitary and start to feed back up after the rut. Very similar to your red deer with bachelor groups.
Oh, okay,
I do a similar. Sometimes they'll be in small groups, but I'm talking 2 or 3 deer, not 5 or 6 or 10 or anything like that. So maybe a big stag with a younger stag, or a couple of similar sized stags together. But that sort of happens from about November onwards, but it's also area specific, so you can go higher elevation and it'll be a different time of year where that happens. But where I hunt, basically, they're rutting in around that July, August, and then through to September you still get rut activity left over from the main rut, drifting off into October, November, where the stags separate from the hinds.
Okay.
That's good.
Into very early spring.
That's great hunting. Up into October, I think. Sort of, if you had to pick a month, I would say...
It's more the fact, for guys that got, they're thinking about what kind of... If they were thinking about it, do it, they're going to want to know a spread they might be doing. They might be chasing reds in March, and they might be heading down to, New South Wales for April for fallow. What kind of calendar and point? So
from May onwards.
For the Queenslander, we can't sit around and wait for that dump of snow to happen. We've probably planned it 6 months out, so you're really trying to make the time.
Yep.
That's it. So having that.
So some of my best hunting, and I've been doing some presentations at ADAs and all the rest of it. And one of the big questions is like, when is the best time to hunt? And for me, if I see a weather front coming, I'm getting excited. I want that really cold westerly wind with low snow, like down to 500-600 metres. That cold snap just pushes the deer into hibernation for that period of time, so they can get out of the weather. And once that breaks, if you can be in the bush when that weather breaks, it's just magic hunting. It's almost as good as getting up in the morning and all the bucks or all the stags are roaring. If you can get in the bush with Samba after that big snow dump or that big cold front, the hunting's as good as that sort of rut activity.
Okay.
Storm chasing.
Yeah.
All right. Any other question, guys, or we might call a wrap?
Yeah, I had a quick one.
I think.
Have you seen much impact from the choppers up that way? A lot of aerial culling, or?
Yeah, it's good.
So it hasn't affected my areas that I hunt yet, but it's going to. It's definitely a thing that they're not going to let go, and I think they're only going to increase the culling. So I don't know. Yeah, it's never going to stop, I don't think, now. So we're just going to have to live with it, unfortunately, and I think it's probably going to impact a lot of people that because we have seen that growth of numbers of deer, and people have had this misconception that the deer must be like, if they see 20 deer on a farm fringe, they wonder, wow, imagine how many deer are back in the forest.
Yeah.
Well, there isn't any more deer back in the forest. Like, I've hunted the one spot for 25 years, and the numbers have actually levelled. I've never seen them up. I've seen them down because of bushfires, but I've never seen them. I've never walked into this spot and just gone, oh my God, they're everywhere. It's always been a fairly consistent population, and I think that's what forest deer do, is they just naturally hold their populations, and there's a strong population of wild dogs or dingoes as well. So I think the predatory, balances out with the hunting pressure as well. Whereas the farm fringe tends to back up and get a lot more volume of deer there. And that's probably where the culls really need to happen, but they tend to be picking on our spots where they can get some easy numbers, I think, and I think that's purely number grabbing for the government to be able to say, hey, look, this is a success. I don't know, but I don't see it going away, and I see it becoming harder for people to hunt later on, because it's going to drop the population, because it is quite effective now. They're using multiple choppers and spotting choppers and thermals, and I've heard that they've shot maybe up to 1,000 deer out of the headwaters of the Dargo River up near Dinner Plain, and that's a lot of deer to go missing. And I know the hound hunters had a lot of trouble this year. They normally get lots of big numbers, and I think they were struggling to get anywhere close to the numbers they've shot the last couple of years, and that's just purely impact from the culling. So it's obviously effective in localised areas. They're obviously never going to get, to be able to fly a chopper over all of the Victorian bush is impossible, but localised areas is going to get decimated, and I'm sure when they put a chopper over my spot, I'm going to walk in there and not find a deer, you know what I mean? So it's going to be heartbreaking one day. But what do you do? That's their plan.
Yeah.
What a note to end on, Jono. Thank you. That's a bit solemn. We have been talking about the deer action plan that's out for consultation. We had a discussion about that the other day. We've got an expert coming on shortly to talk about the science of some of these things, and I'd be really interested to get that perspective as well. But yeah, it's certainly impacting everyone. We saw the decimation of the fallow herd up around Stanthorpe Ballandine Way. It went from super healthy numbers for hunters to struggling to see an animal on the same block anymore. So it's a real shame. But I mean, I get it. I get what they're trying to do. They've got their agenda, and we have ours. And it makes it difficult, but it'll put the hunt back into hunting for many. You'll have to go deeper. You'll have to go longer, and the keen and enthusiastic will find a way. And those that are shooting out of the side of the cars will probably not.
100%. I think you'll see a lot of people will drop away from hunting if it becomes hard to find a deer. And then only the keen hunters will continue, and I think then maybe the hunting could potentially be really good again, because most of my areas are good hunting not because of the deer numbers are more or whatever, it's because there's less hunters. Less hunters means less undisturbed deer and more natural habits. So
that's good. All right, well, before we let you go, let's test your memory for a second. How are people going to find you? Social handles on Instagram?
Yep. I've got a website now. So the website is zebrashunting.com. So all the information you need for any of my courses, guided hunt education, my online course, if you just go to zebrashunting.com, you can find everything you need to know there. You can book group courses there. It's got links to the online course. It's got links to my Patreon, YouTube, Instagram. It's also got some merch for sale on there, so there's a shop on there now. And apart from that, just go through. I've got two Facebook pages. One's just Zeb Jones, and the other one's Zebra Samba Hunting Adventures. On Instagram is ZebraJ82. Yeah, that's when I was born. So I'm all over the socials. I've got the website now, which is good, and obviously YouTube, Zebra's Samba Hunting Adventures as well. If you leave a comment, I'll answer it. But don't be shy. I'm pretty open with everything about, learning how to hunt or any questions, gear or, anything really. Go and check out my Patreon. There's some support levels in there that give you a lot more access to me personally, which might be just what you need to make that hunt successful. Think of it as a couple of tanks of fuel wasted trying to find a deer. For the price of that, you can get a lot of information from me, and
That's a good pitch.
I've got a lot to offer there. Just go and check it out. There's basically some sort of level for everyone. From if you can't afford anything, just watch my YouTube, mate. There's 100 tips in there if you go through them all. I know blokes that sit down and watch them and with a notepad, and when I've spit out a tip or a trick, they're eagerly writing it down. So
Guilty as charged.
So there's free tips, and then you can go right up to the one-on-one with me, and that's just going to be an experience that you'll probably remember for the rest of your life. So
that's amazing. Yeah, it's really good. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on, making the time. I'm sure people get a lot out of this. We'll post all of those social details, bits and pieces in the description of the podcast. It'll go out on our YouTube channel and the various different podcast channels as well. So, looking forward to getting it out, and we'll keep in touch. Looking forward to getting back down there to Samba. You may have just given us another avenue to do so. So, appreciate your time.
No worries. Thank you.
Thanks very much, mate.
Thank you.